Hey, this is Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA prime Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all, those gigantic and cowboy-cut tomahawk cut ribeyes. Best I've ever had, probably be the best you ever have as well. Check them out at UppercutChops.com. That's UppercutChops.com, or give them a call. Find out what's for dinner. 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935 for UppercutChops.com. Yes. And a big welcome in everybody listening in on our CBS, MWC, and Fox Sports affiliates and independents from coast to coast, as well as everybody that may be tuning in on our select carriers from Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, and WOW Cable Television affiliates. Of course, in those select markets, as well as Hotel TV across these United States of America, as well as everybody else that's streaming on Pick Your Favorite platform. And a big hello to our friends over on Facebook on Chicago Food Favorites. Yeah, Chicago Food Favorites. Things that like to play sports, eat, tailgate, whatever. Guess what? At some point, food is always in there. In fact, top of the show, it was UppercutChops.com. All right. All that said, let's think about tailgating. Let's think about the National Football League for a minute here. Looking at these standings, it's sort of a conundrum when you look at the teams that are in first versus the teams that are in last. Maybe not so much last place, but you kind of wonder about some of these teams in first place. And are they contenders or are they pretenders? Right? We always have that inner self battle saying, well, yeah, you know, those guys are pretty good. Maybe they're playing above their heads right now. And you could say that about the Washington Commanders. Of course, I always want to call them the Redskins, but that's no longer. But the Washington Commanders are playing, in my opinion, way above their heads, but surprisingly well and surprisingly consistent. And as I look at these guys, I say, you know, who have they played? Well, you know, they've had a few good games, and yeah, you know, are they really playing the caliber of teams that really indicate that they are a good squad? Okay, so look, they lose to the Buccaneers 37-20. They beat the Giants 21-18 at New York. They beat the Bengals at the Bengals. Actually, they won the game against the Giants at home, but they win in Cincinnati by 5. That's no easy task. And then they go to Arizona, which there's not a lot of defense there, but boy, you think that would be a gigantic shootout, but nope, that's not the case. It was really a one-sided shootout, if you know what I mean, at 42-14. We're going to give them a big round of applause just because we can. And you know, in thinking about what they've been able to accomplish in these first 4 weeks of the season, you say, you know, the preseason, they were 1-2. And the preseason really doesn't matter much. And they lost a couple of close games, one-score games. Then they win a two-score game against the Patriots. But then again, Patriots are rebuilding. So when you look at them, you say, well, are they really a contender? But where do we find out when Washington is a good squad? Because you're looking at their upcoming schedule. They've got Cleveland at home, at Baltimore. That'll be a good game. And really, that's sort of one of those neighborhood battles, because you've got Baltimore and Washington, D.C., which are very close to one another. It's kind of a neighborhood game. But then they have to play Carolina at home. Then they get the Bears at home, which the Bears haven't proven anything at this point. And then they have the Giants. They're at New York. And then it comes down to a fairly weak schedule. I got to tell you, because you've got home against Pittsburgh, at Philadelphia, who's sputtering about, home against Dallas, which has a Dak Prescott problem. Then they're home against Tennessee. Then they get a bye week. And then they're at New Orleans, a big question mark there with Taysom Hill. And then they're playing a very mediocre Philly team. Then they're playing a decent Atlanta team, and then they go to Dallas. So they really don't have that hard of a schedule, all things considered. And you say, well, are they really a contender? Well, looking at this position here at 3-1 on top of the NFC East, you say, well, who else is a good squad in that division? Well, you could argue that Dallas is a good squad, I would say, when they're healthy. I mean, they're fourth in passing, but they're last in the league in rushing, even with the reacquisition of Ezekiel Elliott. And in their passing game, well, they're right in the middle of the pack at 13. And you say, well, geez, hasn't done. You say, well, who are the Dallas Cowboys? Well, the Dallas Cowboys, in the grand scheme of things, they were 1-2 in the preseason. The only game they won was against Cleveland, which, again, that was the first game of the season. Didn't matter. Then they were blown out by, well, they were blown out by New Orleans, as a matter of fact. That wasn't very good. This is regular season games here. So they win at Cleveland, lose big at home against New Orleans. Then they lose a nail-biter by 3 against Baltimore. Then they beat the hapless Giants at New York. So looking at the rest of their schedule, they've got Pittsburgh and Detroit coming up in the next couple of games. Then they have a bye week, and then they play San Francisco. Maybe San Francisco will be healthy. Then they play an upstart Atlanta team. So I would say that they've got their work cut out for them. Then they hit a lull in a few games after that, but then they get to play home against Houston, which is a very good squad. Then they're playing that Washington team, a weak game against the Giants, a good Bengals team, never mind the record. And then they got a couple of soft games. But look, Dallas has a bumpy road, and they're 2-2 right now. And so you look at the balance of the division, you say, well, Philadelphia's pretty weak. They have no identity right now, seemingly. And the Giants, well, they're expected to be in last place, and right now that's exactly where they're at. So is Washington in the position that they should be? Probably. Now, looking at the NFC North, one would think that the Detroit Lions would be in first place, but no! It's the Minnesota Vikings at 4-0 with that stout defense. I mean, they've only given up on average just under 15 points a game. I mean, that is pretty damn good. As a matter of fact, looking at the NFC, that is the best in the NFC. In fact, let's take a look at the AFC real quick, because that might even be the best in the league. The Jets have given up just a touch over at 62 points between 4 games. But the Pittsburgh Steelers actually have 53 points that they've given up, which is, we'll call it, 14 points a game. So Pittsburgh and the Minnesota Vikings, yeah. But then you have the Chargers. They've given up 13 points a game, 12 points a game, whatever, 12.5 points a game when the Chargers are 2-2. But back to this whole, do the Minnesota Vikings belong in first place? Yeah, they probably do. And, I'm not going to argue against it because they've kind of proven where they're at this point. And, we'll give it up to the Vikings because, hey, they're playing pretty good ball right now. And, in fact, that even deserves a little round of applause. So we'll give them one. So the balance of that division, you would think Detroit would be on top. They're 3-1. But Detroit has a problem on defense. They seem to be giving up way too many points. In fact, sure, they're scoring a lot, but they're giving up a lot too. And that's a big concern when you would imagine the defense would be what these guys really need to focus on, because we know they could score points. There's no issue with Detroit scoring points. They scored 104 points between 4 games. That's pretty damn good. You're talking 26 points a game. That's enough to win in the National Football League. Now, moving down to the 2-2 Chicago Bears, they've given up 75, but they scored 77. So they're a team that really lacks a whole lot of luster right now. And, by the way, their odds are essentially 66-1 to win the Super Bowl. That's kind of crazy. Now, Green Bay has the same record at 2-2, and they've given up 14 more points than the Bears have, but they've also scored 29 more points or 27 more points than the Bears have, and they're only 25-1 to win the Super Bowl. But a healthy Green Bay team is actually a fairly decent Green Bay team. In the NFC South, so Minnesota, yeah, they belong on top. In the NFC South, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in first place, which, you know what? I wouldn't argue against that because, remember, they were the division winner last season. And Tampa is playing pretty damn good ball right now at 3-1. They belong in first place. They're a stable organization, and they're winning their games by an average of, well, we'll just call it 5 points, which is somewhere on the league average in the NFL. And Atlanta is 2-2, which that's kind of where they belong. The Saints at 2-2 as well. And Carolina, I'm surprised they even have one win. But then again, that was against, a team that, let's put it this way, the Raiders. We're going to get to them in just a little bit. Over the NFC West, one would imagine the 49ers would be either undefeated or 3-1, but they sit at 2-2 amidst a myriad of injuries, and they're 6.5 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Seattle, a very good Seattle team, is 3-1. They just suffered their first loss in the last week. Arizona, a fun team to watch at 1-3, and the Rams, boy, they are just spiraling downward very quickly. Seems like after Aaron Donald retired, that was just the end of the LA Rams. I don't even know where to go with that one. The Rams are a conundrum because you say, well, geez, they've got all that talent, but Cooper Kupp can't seem to stay healthy, and who knows what's going on with Matthew Stafford. And ultimately, they've got themselves a decent running back, but then they got rid of Cam Akers. So you wonder, what in the world is the Rams' identity right now? So think about this. Both teams in LA are not very good, but the Chargers are the better of the two, and the Chargers have a better coaching tree with Jim Harbaugh and his group. Nonetheless, we're going to get to the AFC in just a few moments here on The Circus. Lots more to come, folks. Don't go anywhere. Back in a few.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America, with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at 702-799-9935. Again, 702-799-9935. Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Could you use a little extra money right now? If you'd like to borrow up to $100,000 and get pre-approved in minutes, call the number we'll give you at the end of this commercial. Our lending partners have already loaned millions of dollars to individuals just like you, and we're ready to lend you up to $100,000 if you qualify. Even if your credit is not perfect, you could use the money to pay off high-interest credit cards, for home renovations, or consolidate existing debt. You can get flexible, easy-to-pay terms. The consultation to find out if you qualify is free. To find out if you qualify for our special financing program, call this toll-free number 24 hours a day. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. That's 800-335-1376. Important terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Loan amount, annual percentage rate, and term will vary depending on creditworthiness. Applying does not guarantee approval. Account approval is subject to verification and confirmation of your credit history and acceptance by a lender. If you choose to apply for a loan through us, a consumer report will be obtained to evaluate your creditworthiness in connection with your application for credit.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at Fast House. Check out fasthouse.com for all your riding gear. You know, recently I went to this event over at the Orange County Fairgrounds, and it was Carchella. Not like Coachella, but Carchella. It had all the off-road vehicles, all the ATVs and sand rails, and really cool stuff. All the big boys' toys, and the big girls' toys, too. As a matter of fact, I ran into Stephanie Wehan from Fast House, who is the sales operations manager, and she hooked me up with some great gear for riding. I have to tell you, talk about a great variety, textures, colors, you name it. Really cool standout stuff, cool gear for men, women, kids, motorbikes, etc., casual. There's accessories, all kinds of cool stuff. Check them out at fasthouse.com. That's fasthouse.com, or give Stephanie a call at 661-713-4576. That's 661-713-4576. That's Stephanie Wehan, who is the sales operation manager at Fast House. Speed, style, and good times. Really cool stuff, folks. All right, a big welcome back to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates from coast to coast, including our friends over in Honolulu on CBS Sports 1500 KHKA. That's home of the 49ers, the New York Yankees, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Welcome in everybody up and down the West Coast, listening in on all of our network affiliates and independents throughout the Midwest, all the way over to Alabama. Big hello to our friends WAUD. That is 1230 on the AM dial over in Auburn, Alabama. War Eagle. Big hello to our friends over there on the Atlanta Braves Radio Network, as well as our friends over in Atlanta, WDJY 99.1 FM. You can catch us there at 8 a.m. every day, or if you go to our recorded shows page, you can find our shows. That's, of course, if you're in Atlanta. Or you can go to our recorded shows page at thesportscircus.com, and you can click on any one of those platforms such as Apple or Audible or Amazon or Spotify or Google or Pandora or whatnot. And you can find the Sports Circus episodes there, too, if you're not in one of our live markets. About 200 stations, 210 stations have access and can download and play our stations across the United States. So, folks, if you miss an episode and you want to listen to some fun and entertaining content with some great stars and from music and entertainment and business and whatnot, well, you can listen to a couple of thousand shows of the Sports Circus right there at thesportscircus.com as well. Okay. Now that we've had all those shameless plugs, along with, of course, our friends at Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, make sure you check that out, folks. Lots of fun over there. So going over to the AFC, we left off the NFC, going to the AFC over in the football standings and looking at the teams that are on top and which ones maybe should be and which ones should not be. And so over the AFC East, there's not really a big surprise there, except for Miami being in last place at 1-3 because there's no Tua because of the concussion situation. And who knows if he's going to come back. Buffalo, you sort of expect to be on top. The Jets with Aaron Rodgers, you don't really know what to expect, but maybe a 500 slightly above. You sort of expect New England to be in last place. Well, they're tied for last anyway. And over in the AFC North, you'd probably expect Baltimore and Cincinnati fighting it out 1-2. But actually, Cincinnati's in last place with Cleveland, and Baltimore's sputtering about at 500 ball right now, yet they have won their last couple of games. Now, in the AFC South, not really a big surprise here because the Houston Texans, they won the division last season, and they're probably going to do it again this season in first place. So not a lot of surprises there. Jacksonville at 0-4 is a little bit of a surprise. I would expect that Indianapolis or Tennessee would be in last place there. So a little bit of a shocker. Is Houston a contender? Absolutely they are. And maybe for the first time, Ohio State may have actually put a quarterback in the league because typically they put them in, but their guys just aren't that good. Historically, they're terrible. But C.J. Stroud may be breaking the mold. Over in the AFC West, you expect Kansas City to be on top, especially with all the referee calls that they get. And you expect the Chargers to compete with them. And I expected the Raiders to be in last place and the Denver Broncos to be kind of right there with them. But I guess just by sheer alphabetical order, Denver sits above Vegas. But they're both 2-2. Why are we talking about this? I'll tell you why we're talking about this. Because Davante Adams of the Raiders reportedly requests a trade after the Raiders coach Antonio Pierce appeared to endorse dealing him on social media. What in the world is going on over there? Well, actually over here, because I'm in Vegas. So anyway, it started with an Instagram like, and Las Vegas Raiders All-Pro Davante Adams fielded questions about his head coach Antonio Pierce appearing to publicly endorse that he be traded. Now, hours later, Davante Adams told the Raiders that he prefers to be traded, and NFL networks had reported that as well. And the local paper here in Vegas, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, meanwhile reported that the Raiders are, quote, growing open to the idea, close quote, of trading Adams and are, quote, reaching out to teams to gauge interest in the veteran wide receiver, close quote, as reported by the Four Letter Network, that the Raiders would consider trading Davante Adams for a package that includes a second-round pick and additional compensation. And partly that second-round pick is kind of what his contract is worth right now, and that's why it's the second-round pick. Anyway, this all has surfaced since Antonio Pierce's digital response to a Sports Illustrated report shared on Instagram that Davante Adams may have played his last snap with the Raiders. Of course, from an Instagram post per Sports Illustrated's Michael Fabiano. Quote, do not be surprised if Davante Adams has already played his last snap with the Raiders. He could have played yesterday, but the Raiders are looking to deal him because they think they can get some value for him, and they know they're going nowhere this year. Seriously? Is that what this has come to? It's kind of embarrassing. It really is. Anyway, Antonio Pierce liked the Instagram post, and of course, he liked it from his personal account. And of course, the guy from Sports Illustrated later shared the screenshot of Pierce's liking on social media. Imagine that. So now the coach is in on it, I suppose. Is that some kind of conspiracy? No. Adams said, quote, I haven't heard from, quote, Pierce. All right. That being said, Adams was inactive for the last win over the Cleveland Browns, which the Browns have the game stolen from them. Yet another one of these seemingly crooked games. Yet it's Vegas. What should we expect? But he was inactive due to a hamstring injury. And so he had sat out for an interview with Kay Adams on her Up and Adams show. And they, of course, discussed Pierce's Instagram activity. And Kay Adams asked him, how soon did he hear from Pierce after Pierce's Instagram liked surface? As of the time of the interview, Adams said that he had yet to hear from his head coach. Well, that's interesting. So I have a soundbite here, and I don't know if I can actually get it, but nonetheless, it says, according to that podcast, of course I say that with air quotes, three-time All-Pro Davante Adams addresses his head coach, Antonio Pierce, liking a post suggesting Adams will be traded. Quote, I haven't heard from him. I don't really know exactly what that's all about. Close quote. And so, social media, he says, is a beast. So there's a lot of people out there that saw it and, wondering what's going on, and people are reaching out. Yeah, I haven't spoken to him. That's what he says. Now, Kay Adams expressed dismay that he hadn't heard from Pierce, then asked Adams if he doesn't want to hear from him. And he says, quote, honestly, it's hard to comment on. It's one of those situations where I just keep my own head down and keep doing my thing and let the chips fall where they may as it pertains to that. There's been no communication with anybody from the team since that became a thing. It's kind of just like the weekly what's up with T thing. Okay? There's always some sort of drama. At the end of the day, 1-7 doesn't create any of it. So people could say what they want. I'm just chilling, trying to be the model for not stirring the pot, just locking in and doing what I've got to do. Close quote. That was by Davante Adams. And of course, as of the time of the post, neither Pierce nor the Raiders had made a public comment on this. On top of it, how about a little bit more drama in Vegas? So the next one is the latest in a Raiders season that has already been embroiled in just 4 weeks. And the drama has largely involved Pierce, who's in his second season as the Raiders head coach. Of course, because they got rid of John Gruden. In my opinion, Gruden is going to win an enormous lawsuit against the league and probably the team. Again, that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it, so you can't say it's not something that is going to happen. We don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's just my opinion. Anyway, after a Week 3 loss, Pierce cryptically criticized, quote, business decisions, close quote, made by players following a blowout loss to the Carolina Panthers, which is hilarious to imagine. Then doubled down on his comments the next day. And in the news conference, Pierce largely declined to take personal accountability for the poor performance of his team. That's not really what a head coach does now, is it? So he did apologize for his, quote, business decisions, close quote, comments after the win over the Browns. And then says, probably started with me, with my comments, and I apologize for that. Don't want to be a distraction, but that way we just went to work each day, and things came out throughout the week, and it just never flinched or blinked, close quote. Nonetheless, the whole thing is a big steaming pile of, you know what, we're going to be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Here we go. I'm your Ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Hello, Americans. It's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time, that's 800-950-2049.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
That's ridiculous.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at Rhino USA for superior power sport accessories. Check them out at rhinousainc.com. That's rhinousainc.com. And you can also give Jeff Christensen a call. He is the B2B sales manager. Give him a call at 951-426-4844. 951-426-4844. That's Jeff Christensen. He is the B2B sales manager at rhinousainc.com. Check him out there for superior power sport accessories. Yes. All right. You wonder why we're plugging those organizations. Got to tell you, folks, recently went to that off-road sand rail, ATV, ATC, off-road everything, gigantic event. It was called Coachella. I don't know if that's the original name for it or the real name for it, but somebody had sent me a poster or a JPEG on it. And I said, wow, look at this. I'm going to go to this thing. And it was this enormous event over at the Orange County Fairgrounds in Southern California, over in Costa Mesa. Have to tell you, folks, I was blown away at the size and scope of this. I won't call it a convention. I don't even know what to call it. It's just an enormous event. It was super cool. So all the probably the coolest off-road vehicles I've ever seen were all in one place. And this was the fairgrounds over there in Orange County, and it was gigantic. There had to be, 30 to 50,000 people there. It was nuts. I've never seen so many cool vehicles for off-roading, great gear like we had mentioned before. And I have to tell you, this was a great event, and I don't really know a whole lot about the off-road world. I mean, I like watching it on TV. I've never ridden in one of those cool sand rails over at Glamis and the sand dunes or whatnot in Southern California, but I can assure you, if this is your thing, I mean, I like it. I just don't know enough about it. But I have to tell you, the coolest things I think I've seen all year were at this Coachella event over in Orange County. And again, make sure you check out our friends over at Rhino USA. Check them out at rhinousainc.com, of course, for all your power sports accessories, etc. All right. Again, nice round of applause for them. I'm only carrying on because I just thought it was a pretty cool thing. And, honestly, we haven't really covered a lot of off-road anything on this show. We have an occasional guest on here, and that's Ian Rakelli, who is a former sprint car driver. Now, we did have a former sprint car driver, and, well, obviously we had champions, but the same sprint car driver I'm referring to was also Mario Andretti, who is a racing legend. So he's won at every level of racing. Anyway, Mario told us about some of his off-road riding and competitive races and this and that around the world. I mean, what a great experience. But we haven't really had a whole lot of that on. So we're going to make a concerted effort to bring some of the off-road champions on. And, man, this is some really cool stuff. Anyway, all right, back to the NFL. I completely digressed here for the last several minutes just because I could. Anyway, talking about Davante Adams in the last segment, because it's going to change a lot of things now. If this guy moves, if Antonio Pierce endorses him moving and whatnot, because it sure sounds like this is what's going on here, there are some possible landing spots that could make a difference in these NFL standings. It's the reason I went through at the top of the show. And you ask yourself, well, where could he go? And, I mean, look, it's basically wide open. There's multiple media reports that the Raiders, of course, are seeking that deal. And it appears it's just a matter of working out the details. And this guy, look, he's 31. And he's sort of on the backslope of his career. Usually at the age of 30, the body starts to break down. Pick your favorite professional sport. It is what it is, folks. Nonetheless, he's still extremely productive. And, I mean, shoot, even last season, he had 103 receptions, 1,144 yards, 8 touchdowns. He was averaging just under 70 yards a game. And this guy is really good still. So, I mean, look, there's plenty of the tank left for this guy. And you wonder, where could he go? Well, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is the New York Jets. Of course, that one jumps right off the page. And Devontae, of course, developed into one of the league's best receivers in 8 seasons, catching passes from Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. And, of course, Rodgers now is the quarterback for the Jets, and a team that, through 4 games, has really fallen short of expectations. And it seems like Aaron Rodgers have had some conflict. I don't know. I wasn't there, but it seems like he's had conflict with one of his rookie receivers. And so maybe Adams might be a really good fit with the Jets. And let's face it, the Jets entered the season with Super Bowl hopes, but of course are 2-2 coming off one of the worst losses of the season with a 10-9 loss to the Denver Broncos. But then again, folks, that was in a driving rainstorm. So yeah, it was a bad loss, but then again, how bad of a loss really was it? Because look, you're playing in the elements. It is what it is. And the Jets scored 3 field goals and failed to get in the end zone. But then again, they say, well, the alarms are blaring and all this other crap. I don't really think so. I just think it's a matter of, look, it was bad weather. It is what it is. But here's a telling factor. So recently, there was a photo of Aaron Rodgers with Davante Adams. And, well, it looks like that photo was taken at the Raiders game that they just played against another team. So my question is, are these two destined to come back to one another? You never know. And so here, third-year pro Garrett Wilson is a standout, but so far as he's been limited to 191 yards and 1 touchdown through 4 games in a very stagnant offense. So Allen Lazard, who played with Rodgers at Green Bay, is New York's leading receiver with 206 yards, but who better to add a jolt to the Jets' attack than Aaron Rodgers' all-time favorite target? Probably Davante Adams seems to be a good fit there. He also might be queued up to go to the Dallas Cowboys. And let's face it, Cowboys are struggling along at 2-2, ugly losses to the Saints, and, well, let's face it this way, they didn't really set the world afire against the Giants. And Jerry Jones seems to like to spend money, already raising his hand to take the blame, but he says, essentially, we haven't had enough time to get to where we need to go. So, look, they had a problem with CeeDee Lamb coming off of training camp because of holdout, and that's always a slow start situation. But the Cowboys, they have an offense that managed just 20 points against the Giants. That's not very good. And there's no true number 2 option on the wide receiver depth chart, so it looks like he might be a very good fit with Dallas as well. But the bigger question is, can Dak Prescott, but you can call him Dakota, can Dak Prescott stay healthy? Now, as far as the Buffalo Bills, they are a suitor as well. And yes, they did lose to Baltimore recently in that last game, but it's not like the team needs something happening right now. I mean, like, they are 3-1, they're in first place, and they're in sort of a weak division. But then again, if they end up with Davante Adams over Aaron Rodgers, well, that would be a big plus. If the Jets end up with them, now the Jets end up being maybe contending for first place in the AFC East. So you never know what that's going to look like. And then you ask yourself, well, after the offseason trade of Stephon Diggs, third-year wideout Khalil Shakir sits atop the Bills' depth chart, and that's not really the best-case scenario. Would Davante Adams fit in there? Yes, absolutely he would, and I think that would be a very good fit. Where else could he go? Oh, how about Baltimore? So, look, they're still searching for their first Pro Bowl receiver of the Lamar Jackson era, because Lamar Jackson is their Pro Bowler. The problem is this guy runs all the time, and we don't know if he's going to run or pass or whatever, and I think he almost makes Derrick Henry a second fiddle, and I don't really like that. Jackson needs to be in the pocket, passing and doing what he does as a quarterback, and let the running stick with a guy like Derrick Henry. That's the reason he's there in the first place. So you just ask yourself, the Ravens have spent 3 first-round draft picks on receivers since 2019, selecting Marquise Brown, Bateman, and Zay Flowers. I like Zay Flowers, but Brown is no longer with the team. Bateman, 144 yards, 4 games. Flowers, 158 yards in 4 games. Don't look remotely closely to making a Pro Bowl for either one of those guys, so they need somebody. But how about Washington? Yes, how about Washington, the Commanders, with Jaden Daniels? This guy's showing that he's a pretty damn good quarterback. And here's a team that didn't enter the season with playoff expectations either, much less Super Bowl hopes, while the latter remains pretty far-fetched for now anyway. Rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels is changing that narrative. So, I mean, this guy has really shown he could do it. And look, he is the real deal, at least through 4 games. And Terry McLaurin is on the verge of a star turn. So McLaurin, he was always a good receiver. but now is looking like the guy that Washington thought he was anyway. Imagine if they add Davante Adams. What about the Steelers? Remember, Russell Wilson out. So they've got Bustin Fields, and unfortunately, you've got a quarterback in Fields that seems to run away from his protection. And I don't think Justin Fields is that guy that will throw with consistency. So is Davante Adams going to make a big difference there if he goes there? I don't necessarily believe so, because the heart and soul of that club is defense. Where could he go? Probably the Kansas City Chiefs. And do you want to trade in your own division? Yeah, because the Raiders aren't ready to do something now, and they could get something back from Kansas City when they're on the downside, and the Raiders are back on the upside. Anyway, the Chiefs need somebody to replace Rashee Rice right now. So that may be a pretty good fit. You never know what's going to happen there, but I would think that the Chiefs would be probably one of the better fits, and the Raiders in the long run would benefit by making a deal, trading in the division, because it would be addition by subtraction down the road. Back here in a few minutes on the Circus. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes, are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Power Tank. Check out powertank.com for all your Power Tank systems, power shot systems, tire inflators, nitrogen equipment, propane brackets, and more. That's powertank.com. You can also call Antonio. He is the sales manager at Power Tank. You can call him at 209-643-8922, 209-643-8922, or you might be able to visit them if you're over in Lodi, California at 43 Commerce Street, number 103. That's Lodi. That's 43 Commerce Street over in Lodi, suite number 103. Check out powertank.com or give Antonio a call. Yes! All right, welcome back to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates from coast to coast. Everybody also watching on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, and WOW Cable Television affiliates in select markets. Thanks for joining us there, as well as in hotels from coast to coast and all Nielsen-rated markets when broadcasted, as well as everybody streaming on Pick Your Favorite platform. Big hello to our friends over on Chicago Food Favorites. Folks, make sure you check out Chicago Food Favorites. And also, when you're at the sportscircus.com, make sure you check out all of our partners. Lots of great partners over there, including the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. That's csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. csncoyotes.com for the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Now, speaking of college here, we have the carousel of the different conferences. Everybody seems to, schools getting on, or the schools getting off, moving to this one, moving to that conference. So now sources are stating that University of Texas El Paso, UTEP, is leaving Conference USA for the Mountain West Conference. You know what? We're going to give them a round of applause. Because actually, it's a pretty good fit geographically for UTEP. However, leaving the West Coast Conference is Gonzaga. They're leaving the West Coast Conference, according to sources, for the Pac-12. This is crazy. So the conference realignment dominoes continue to fall. UTEP informed Conference USA that it is leaving for the Mountain West. Sources confirm this to multiple outlets. And the Mountain West and UTEP have been in intense negotiations for several days. Now, separately, Gonzaga, the Bulldogs, but you can call them the Zags, they are joining the Pac-12, which really is the Pac-7, soon to be the Pac-7 and a half. This is crazy. So the Bulldogs, of course, are the revamped Pac-12's 8th member. However, the school doesn't have a football program, so it doesn't count as a full-time member in the same way that Notre Dame doesn't count really as a full-time member of the ACC because their football program is independent. Nonetheless, the Pac-7.5 at this point conference still needs to add at least one more full-time member to reach the minimum threshold of 8. They used to be called the Pac-8 way back in the day. But Gonzaga brings a storied basketball program, as everybody knows, to the Pac-12, but I keep calling it the Pac-7.5 because I can. And the Bulldogs have made the NCAA tournament for the last 25 consecutive years and advanced to at least the Sweet 16 the last 9 tournaments. They'll join San Diego State, Colorado State, Utah State, Fresno State, Boise State, Washington State, and Oregon State in the new Pac-12, well, Pac-7. But the problem is this. If Gonzaga is the only real academic-driven institution, I say this with all due respect to all the other schools, I can tell you as a college recruiter for the last 24 years for one of America's top universities, and one of the top universities in the world, this conference, in my opinion, is not going to get the recognition at the Pac-12 level as a Power 5 like they previously had because the Pac-12 lost their research institutes, those being USC, UCLA, Stanford, Cal, Washington, and Oregon. They lost 6 research-driven institutions. Technically, they would be getting a half of one back in Gonzaga. I don't even know if that even matters or if that counts. I wouldn't even call Gonzaga a research institute. I'd call them a quality institution academically. But the other ones, San Diego State, this is my opinion, folks. San Diego State, not the smartest school. Colorado State is very good in agriculture. Utah State, well, they play good defense in football. Fresno State, they are not up to snuff academically. Boise State, same situation. Washington State, sputtering about. Oregon State, better than Washington State. So right now, academically, in my opinion, it is Oregon State that is probably the best academic institution in the reformed Pac-12 as a member of the old and a current member of the Pac-7.5, so to say. Now, Gonzaga will bring some value academically, but the only way, in my opinion, that the Pac-12 is going to be able to get that recognition, they're going to have to take in some smarter schools. Sorry, folks, it is what it is. And some people, they're like, well, you're just being an academic snob. No, I'm not. I'm being real about this. And nobody wants to have the real conversation. Folks, these are universities. These are not teams. This is what you've got to get into your heads if you're thinking otherwise. The reality is these are universities and colleges. These are not just sports teams. No, they're universities that happen to have sports teams. But remember, academics are what this is all about. That said, if we're talking about academics, then we probably need to consider the idea that in order for the Pac-12, who lost 6 research institutions, they're going to have to replace some of them. Now, how could they do that? They might be able to do it. They'll get a huge boost if they somehow lure in the Air Force Academy. That would be an enormous step in the right direction. That, in fact, always deserves a round of applause. So look at it this way. If they get the Air Force, what does that mean? They may be able to talk in the U.S. Navy. They may be able to talk in Army. Now, if you have all 3 branches in this newly formed Pac-12, even though geographically they're all over the place, now that would probably bring some real teeth, and they may be able to get that with the addition of possibly Rice. If you can lure Rice to come over to the Pac-12, Rice is one of America's top universities that nobody really hears much about. They are smart. Why do you think they have an owl? Right? The owl, we think of the smart owl. Nonetheless, Rice would be a tremendous addition. And I even think adding Tulane would be a good addition because Tulane is a pretty good university out of that New Orleans area. And who else is out there available that could qualify? So if you have a part-time member in basketball in Gonzaga, well, that would also mean that you could take other part-time members too. And other part-time members that could help the university system from an academic side could be Santa Clara. It could be the University of San Francisco. 2 pretty good universities there, even UC Davis. UC Davis does have a football team, but academically you'd be bringing in a University of California school that is pretty damn good in UC Davis. And yes, they do play basketball. They have a football team. They're not very good, but they would count as a full-time member. Would you include another state university like Sacramento State? You could. The problem is academics, you're not doing much. With all due respect, the California state school system, outside of a couple that are pretty good, I would say those couple would be Cal Poly Pomona, which in my opinion is the academic flag of the California State University school system, and maybe Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I think those are the 2 best state schools in there, and you might be able to even throw San Jose State in there. But end of day, you're going to have to lure in some better academic schools. And I don't think, again, with all due respect, San Diego State, Colorado State, Utah State, Fresno State, Boise State, Washington State, Oregon State. Look, you got a bunch of state universities, but you don't have the academic powerhouses. And I just gave a solution on bringing the military branches in, possibly bringing in maybe a Tulane. Certainly Rice would help it. Gonzaga certainly helps it a little bit, but maybe even USF. I think UC Davis is a really good selection because it keeps it geographically set for the Pac-12. Because let's face it, you need football on the West Coast, but you also need some schools that are going to do something. And, even the addition of Hawaii, the University of Hawaii, would make a little bit of sense. So they would have to lure them away from the Mountain West. And Hawaii actually does have some research, of course, from a oceanography situation and from a biology and botany standpoint. I think University of Hawaii could be an addition to the Pac-12 that would make a little bit of sense academically. And of course, we already know that they play against Fresno and Boise and Utah and San Diego State anyway. So this would actually bring in a good rivalry situation. They didn't take UNLV for probably, in my opinion, a bunch of reasons. And I think UNLV academically is not ready to take the next step up anyway, because it just seems like they're more interested in sports than academics. And why am I talking about that? Because it matters. Why do you think Stanford and Cal are really good fits for the ACC along with SMU, right? We think of these schools and you say these are good institutions in a very good academic and athletic conference. So somebody had said to me, loyal listener Larry had said, well, hey, Stanford and Cal are going to come back to the Pac-12. No, they won't. Because look what they've replaced USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon with. I mean, again, with all due respect, San Diego State, Colorado State, Utah State, Fresno State, Boise State, that's what they brought in? I don't think so. Why would Stanford and Cal come back to the Pac-12? There's no academic reason, and they're making enough money over in the ACC, and frankly, that's where they belong academically anyway, and it would be a disaster for them to come back to the Pac-12 because all it would do is show that these schools are inconsistent, and that would hurt their enrollment. And honestly, I think it would be bad all the way around for the Pac-12 and for Stanford and Cal anyway, just like if USC, UCLA, Washington, or Oregon came back. They're not going anywhere. They're staying in the Big Ten right now where they belong, oddly as it seems. But guess what? The revamping of the Pac-12 is going to take more than just teams showing up for universities. They're actually going to need some academics. So here's a little word of advice, Pac-12 commissioner. Why don't you seek out some good academic institutions that happen to play the sports you're seeking? Maybe that would be the best plan of attack. I don't know, just saying from a college recruiter, an academic recruiter for the ACC. That's going to do it, folks, for today. I'm your Ringmaster Sal. We'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.